Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And there were a lot of updates. First, let's start with Kiev. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Russians, according to information we have, managed to concentrate up to 1,000 missiles. Up to 1,000 missiles of different types like X-101, X-555, Kalibr, Iskander, and many other types of missiles. And obviously the Russians are planning to start using them like these days. And the Ukrainian sources reported, for example, today, that the Russians are planning to start massive bombardments and missile strikes within the next 48 hours. Obviously, we understand that the Russians are planning to bomb energy facilities, railways, bridges, probably. The main purpose of the Russians is to collapse the Ukraine and to collapse the Ukraine, not just like a particular front line, but the entire Ukraine, to get complete superiority, to penetrate the defense belts all over the entire combat line, and to complete the special military operation. The Russians are getting ready. Further, maybe the Russians have some plans to start military coup, as we discussed in previous videos. But the problem is, and the most interesting update is, that the Western intelligence obviously know for sure about the Russian plans, and today we got at least from several different independent sources that Ukrainians probably will get F-16s this winter. So what is the connection between the F-16s, between Russian missiles, accumulation of missiles, attacks against energy facilities, and so on? And the thing is that the Ukrainians are planning to use F-16s not as the weapon to shut down Russian airplanes, not as the weapon to, I don't know, to do some attacks against the Russian forces in Avdiivka or something like this. At least on this stage of special military operation, the Ukrainians are planning to use F-16 as probably as the air defense forces. We know about the experience, we saw the previous experience of the usage of Patriots and NASAM systems on the ground, and they shown the results, and they shown very poor results, because first of all, NASAMs and Patriot systems are static air defense systems, and if once they were recognized, obviously the Russians would be able to destroy them easily in a very short period of time. But when talking about F-16, this is mobile type of air defense, and each time the Russian launch missiles, the Ukrainians will launch their F-16s, and F-16s will shut down the Russian Kalibrs and different types of missiles. So basically, at the next stage of war, these F-16s are going to play the role of air defense. Maybe for some period of time, maybe later the Ukrainians will find a solution how to improve their skills and so on, and maybe they will use this type of aircrafts in any other ways, so we'll see. But this is not the final update, and today the Russians published also very interesting piece of news, and let's take a look at this video, at this photo. The Russians are saying that they complete the technical investigations and technical things with the creation of the 5th generation aircraft by the name of Checkmate. And the next year, probably in 2024, we're gonna see first models and first production models of this type of aircraft, of 5th generation Checkmates. And this, as I understand, probably there are going to be some lack of time, some gap, when the Ukrainians for a very short period of time will be able to establish some, let's say, air defense superiority with F-16s. Probably the Ukrainians understand this, that let's say by the time the Russians will use most of their missiles, they will be able to defend the airspace of Ukraine and energy facilities. But as I understand, somewhere in the middle of the next year, we're gonna see more and new types of Russian aircrafts like Checkmates, and then we're gonna see the fall of F-16s of Ukrainian air forces. So the next year is going to be very interesting, and as I see, we're getting to the final stage or pre-final stage of the special military operation. I'm talking about the real battles in the sky between the most modern weapon, most modern aircrafts of the Western countries and the most modern aircrafts of the Russian Federation. Now let's move to the situation on the ground. We got also a lot of updates. The first updates are coming from Krynki. Yet the Russians haven't managed to establish return control over the village, and today the Russian sources published the video of Russian special operation in the forest on the south of Krynki. Based on this video, you can make few conclusions. First of all, as you can see, this video was geolocated, by the way. As as you can see, according to these videos, there are no long-term defense belts or defense constructions. It's just a forest with a significant number of trees and without any trenches and fortifications. So basically, during the previous period of clashes in this area, the Russians haven't managed to improve their positions in the forest. Basically, they didn't expect that the Ukrainians will attack and will capture a half of Krynki. On this video, we see the Russian counteroffensive. That was like a false flag attack, or like a false attack with the attempt to stretch the Ukrainian forces to make a picture that the Russians counterattacking, because on the other part of Krynki, a small Russian squad, small Russian group was encircled, and the Ukrainians were storming those positions to destroy the Russian, let's say, reconnaissance or sabotage group. As a result of that counterattack, the Ukrainians were forced to step back, and the Russians managed to save their lives and to evacuate the wounded soldiers, killed soldiers, and basically to, let's say, to save the lives of those soldiers who were encircled. Anyway, lots of interesting details we can get from this video. We can get the updates about the real positions of the Ukrainians in Krynki. We understand that the northern part of the forest has no fortifications, long-term fortifications, and there are still a lot of job in front of the Russians to, let's say, to improve their positions here. While the clashes in Krynki, the Russians continue counter-artillery duels, and during the previous probably days, they managed to destroy significant number of artillery forces, artillery systems of Ukrainian forces in Kherson area, and all those artillery forces the Ukrainians were using to support their offensive or defense forces in Krynki, in Gola Pristin, on the islands, along the Dnipro River, and many other places. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction, because we also got a lot of updates from this territory. First of all, as you can see, I have updated the map. Now we see the Stepova and the tree lines on the north of chemical plant and the Russian control. And this morning we continue receiving updates that the Russians currently are trying to storm Avdiivka chemical plant. There are ongoing clashes in Stepova, and now the Russians also are trying to attack in direction of chemical plant. So basically, as I understand, now the Russians are trying to improve their positions, to establish full control over this tree line, and probably to establish control over this small industrial area that located on the northeast of Avdiivka. So the Russians basically want to take under control the buildings and facilities that located on the Russian side of the railways. Obviously, the Russians are not able to cross this long line of railways because the distance is too long, and the Ukrainians basically will destroy the Russians with the snipers. But to take control over the buildings on the Russian side, they have chances, because the Ukrainians from this perspective need to support this area, and the Ukrainians need to cross the railways. Furthermore, another interesting updates are coming from Avdiivka, and the Russians have improved. Finally, they have found the technology and possibilities how to improve their FAB 3000 bombs with guided equipment. And when talking about Avdiivka, this is the first area where the Russians started using this type of bomb. Obviously, the Russians using FAB 3000s are planning to reduce Avdiivka chemical plant till ruins, or let's say the residential area that located in the central part, and of course this will improve the Russian possibilities in their offensive. Some updates are coming from the south. We have some footage of Russian FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian fortifications in the machine gun position. This machine gun position that located in the area of the bridges, destroyed bridges. The Russians still haven't managed to destroy this fortification, as I understand. And now we see that there are real underground tunnels that connect Tsarskaya Khota fortification with machine gun position. So currently this is like the tough nut that the Russians still haven't managed to crack. They need a few days, maybe even weeks, until they are able to create a secure way, and then they will start movement further to Tsarskaya Khota. So nothing special, just FPV drone bombardment. And very interesting updates are coming from the industrial area on the southeast part of Avdiivka, and today the Russian sources reported that as a result of clashes that took place during the previous weekend, the Russians managed to establish control and to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture significant number of fire positions. So this is like the progress on this map. We see that this is a very big square, four fire positions, a lot of buildings, a lot of Ukrainian fortifications. So if we will add this, let's say, on map, the Russians during the previous weekend managed to establish control over the territory, something like this. It's a very huge progress in the southeastern part of Avdiivka, and the main reason why the Russians managed to achieve this is that Ukrainians completely have complete absence of artillery support in the farthest point of Avdiivka. Imagine yourself, to support the Ukrainians in this area, the Ukrainians need to bring their artillery system somewhere on the line, let's say Novoselovka, Pershe, Semyonovka, so somewhere in this square. And we understand that Ukrainians don't have chances to bring artillery here, so that's why the Ukrainian forces on the edge positions have no support from artillery, just the, let's say, local mortar systems, light mortar systems that like light infantry can use somewhere from Avdiivka. Of course, it's too dangerous because there are hundreds of FPV drones flying above the city, trying to hunt and to get the target to destroy it. So the situation continued developing in a not very good way for the Ukrainians. When talking about Bakhmut, the clashes in this area continues. Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russians took a decision to continue offensive operation, and as a result, according to Ukrainian intelligence, the next goal and the next plan of the Russians is to establish control over the cities and villages that located in this, let's say, a wide square, and this is the Russian main target. The Russians are not planning to make massive attacks in Klishchiivka. Maybe it's time to some attacks to stretch the Ukrainian forces, but the main purpose and the main goal is to establish a dangerous situation for Chasiv Yar from the north. And now we will finish this video with Kupin's direction. According to information we have, for the 5th or 6th time in a row, the Russians answered Sinkovka from the north, and currently there are very heavy clashes with 30th Mechanized Brigade in the city. And the Russians, according to information we have, established at least fire control over the first streets of the village. So basically, this territory is not just in the gray zone, but is the area of, like, let's say, under fire control, and the first Russian goal, first Russian target in the village. So the situation in Sinkovka continues escalates. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.